Fnatic taking the 2-0 win in our previous series just moments ago, as we now move on to two entirely different regions. Moving on. What just happened?
We're doing our best Cho'Gath impression.
I was attempting my very best to have a proper serious intro, and all of a sudden, out the corner of my eye, a creeping hand.
You're just easily distracted. I'm just casually repositioning.
I'll have you know I'm a professional. Anyway, of course, we're going to be moving on to another series in just a moment here for HGC. I am joined back with the same boys once again. Not going to introduce them once again. But overall, that was a strong victory, Grubby, for Fnatic.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. No, they did great. I mean, they did exactly what was expected, right? I have so much respect for the way Fnatic has been playing these days.
Yes.
And Deadly Kitten should be a minor bump on the road. Really respect where Deadly Kitten is coming from as well. I mean, they did their homework. They practiced with Korean teams, Chinese teams. They traveled 2 hours a day, 3 of their members, to qualify in better conditions. Not ideal, just somewhat better. So I really like where they're coming from, but Fnatic just way too difficult for them.
Yeah, one of the hardest opponents potentially in the entire tournament. So obviously we're going to shift focus now. We're going to be looking at another match coming up, which will be SPT going up against Nomia. I think we can check in with the groups to see the current standings. We refreshed your mind as to what was going on just before, but let's check in with that once again, as we're going to have, as I say, SPT versus Nomia coming up in just a few moments' time, and then from that point on, we will end up having MVP Black going up against Brawl 20. I know a series that Fan is very excited about. So let's take a little bit of a tangent and talk about this SPT versus Nomia that's going to be coming up. SPT is a team that wasn't supposed to be here, technically. Technically speaking. Unfortunately, CE did have some visa issues, and as such, SPT has arrived as their replacement. But at the top of China, Tetra, it was a very close competition.
Yes, it was. Like we said, they finished on the exact same game score, but the only difference was map score. By the final week of HGC China, it would have required one of the top 3 teams to go 0-3 for it to be possible for the top 3 standings to change. But the level they are at, each of those top 3 teams beat each other. Super Perfect Team beat CE, E-Star beat Super Perfect Team, and CE beat E-Star. It was a full triangle of defeat, which is why Super Perfect Team very well deserved to be here. And I'm excited about them being here because they have some very alternative drafts.
Do they indeed?
They do.
Of course, just to reiterate, this is Nomia that you were seeing on camera there just for a moment. Let's talk about Nomia as well, just very, very briefly before we really kind of take that deep dive into these teams. They're a team that, at the Western Clash, we were all of a sudden like, wait, what just happened?
Well, at the Western Clash, we had an opening match, very much like here at the mid-season Brawl, with a favorite team, Misfits, which is now Team Liquid, was up against Nomia, which kind of channels the spirit of what we saw here in Deadly Kittens. A huge underdog with a huge favorite, and Nomia won the first map against Team Liquid. And they did really well. Like they lost a lot of their series 1-2. They were the big surprise of the tournament that although they didn't win series against big teams, they really impressed. And we are all excited for them here. And they said they're playing even better now than they were.
And this is why it's more important, because you mentioned they took a map. They weren't able to take series, but that's not what's important here. The format we're going by, they only need 1 map to gain that 1 point, and every point counts.
Yeah, it does. It does. You're right. So make sure at home as well to get those votes in with the hashtag of which team you think is going to win over in chat, very importantly, and then we'll tally that up, and hopefully it's more than 1%. For one of these teams going forwards. I think this one might be a little bit closer. We shall see, we shall see. But now let's focus on our starting team, which will be Nomia, our Australian team. We've spoken to them at length. They've been almost at every single tournament. Let's take a look at SPT anyway.
Oh, no.
Let's go to Nomia. Okay, yeah, we're going to start with Nomia, boys. They're a team that has, you know, they've been almost at every single international tournament that they've had the opportunity to qualify for. And they've been very vocal to us about it's difficult to practice in Australia because the wealth of talent just isn't there. But they are definitely the standouts of that region, right?
Yeah, being from a region like Australia gives you an advantage and a disadvantage. The disadvantage is very little regional composition. They can get by dragging their feet, theoretically speaking. But at the same time, they get to qualify over and over for international tournaments. So this is not their first event. It's not their second event internationally. That part helps. Whatever lessons they learned recently, they can put that to the test now. So that's definitely an advantage as well.
Fan, what are your thoughts on Nomia?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's why part of the hype about Nomia is there, though. At Western Clash, like Grubby said, they almost beat Team Liquid. They took a game off. They were threatening Core in another game.
Right.
And they took a game off of Team 8 back then as well. And they did all that without any, real practice partners in their region. So it's a lot of hype about them right now. Really curious to see how they're going to stack up against China, who's a bit of a mystery card as well.
And there, of course, at the very end was Arcana. For me, one of the standout players, actually, of the team. He used to be on, like, a lot of Dahaka. Back when it was old Dahaka, but as I say, Bugatti Dahaka is, like, still a good pick, right? So we could potentially see him on that. Who really stands out for you guys on Nomia?
I still lean towards Arcana. Like you said, last time on his false start especially was one of the most terrifying things that we had in the entire tournament. He was just everywhere. Almost every kill he was involved in some way.
Grubby? Any standouts?
Yeah, same thing. Really good Mighty Gus. They really helped to contribute to their victory over Team Liquid back then. And you always see those try-hard attempts of getting like the beautiful Mighty Gus. Yeah. But if the follow-up isn't there, if you miscalculate, if you don't fly into the right place, it just becomes this huge liability for the team. But what we were all impressed with about Nomia, because we've talked about their map scores, is their teamfight coordination. Like, we actually felt pretty bad for them after we spoke to them in the pre-game interview. They seemed, if not despondent, at the very least, maybe a little bit discouraged about the level of practice they had had. But their teamfight coordination looked really good. Let's see if they can do it again. I think they're the favorite over SPT. It's kind of strange. We've been talking about China all the time. Yeah. Competitive region. It's very close between the top players. Korea has been touting the horn of China. Yeah. I think Nomia is the favorite over SPT. It might be a little crazy, but maybe it is true.
Well, let's talk about SPT. Obviously, a team that has come in as a replacement for CE. And overall, one thing that's very important for us to acknowledge right out of the gates is that they are not here with their full roster.
No, they are running a sub.
Yes, and they are missing probably one of the main components of their roster in Misaka.
Right, so they're missing Misaka, and the way they described it was Misaka is their shot caller, he's their drafter, he's their, he kind of drives the team.
Yes.
And, they said that they just really want to make it out of the group stages here. Misaka might be able to go to the bracket stage, and if he does, it'll kind of be like a Gandalf situation where he comes in at last second and can, save the team, and hopefully they can do a lot better.
Rides out over the mountains at Helm's Deep, comes in with his little staff, shining the light.
Over the BYC area at DreamHack Summer.
They like look up, tears running down the...
Oh, I hope they can really do that. Put him on the podium and like shine a light.
That would be beautiful.
It would be cool. But this is the substitute player here, Simba. Going to be running in. I have not seen him play, so I am super excited to see how he does. He's been a sub since the start.
Just to put a note, like, he's not just someone they found on the street.
No,
like,
absolutely.
He is their dedicated sub and has been for a while. So he's been watching their games. He knows the people, right?
He's been playing in their games. Anytime a player is not available for a scrim, Simba is the one who fills in. They would not have him here if he was not the right person for this.
Yeah, and I mean, when we were talking to the team, he seemed comfortable as well. So as you say, he's not somebody that just brought in randomly to actually fill that spot. Let's take a look at what the maps are going to be for these two teams going into their best of two. So 2 maps, lots of 2s, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. It's going to be Cursed Hollow to start things out, and then Infernal Shrines down the line. I was about to say if we need it, but of course we need it, because it's the best of 2.
We definitely need that map as well. Yeah.
Like, nah, just throw it out, it's fine.
All right, 2 of the most standard maps.
Yes.
Where you can basically draft any way you like, but team fight will be important.
I think one thing that's interesting about these two teams, especially when we spoke to them, is that SPT kind of, because they've come in so late, kind of comes in with this, they don't have many forward strats planned from what they were saying, so it's almost like it's devil may care attitude. Not that they don't care, because obviously they very much so do on a grand stage like this, but they're willing to experiment, which is very important.
Well, you're very right, because when you are going into a tournament with weeks to prepare and okay, we're facing these 7 teams, this is when our flight leaves, you'll be like, okay, let's prepare this strategy for this team, we'll take our own style, but we'll adapt. When you suddenly become a substitute team and you're playing in a tournament, all you rely on are your fundamentals. And that can be a really good thing because you're relaxed, but it can also be a detriment.
And SPT fundamentals, as I said before, can get a little weird.
Yeah.
They currently have 100% win ratio with Cho'Gall, Gazlo, Nova, and Twin Blade variant.
The last more than one sample size?
One game of each of these heroes, but that means that they are able to experiment and play with these heroes, and they can bring them out in the games that win them games. They've also done Toad Zebo, which is won a game. All of these win. They will only run them if they're able to win. And these are against good teams in some cases.
Right. I think the examples that you brought up, I think the Cho'Gall and the Twin Blades variant were mid-season, where the other ones were like, oh, it's towards the later end of the season.
Yeah, the Nova and the Gazlo were right at the end of the season.
They were interesting.
But the Twin Blades variant was against a very solid team and did exceptionally well.
So, looking at this matchup, Fan, I mean, Grubby already mentioned that he thinks that Nomia might be the favorite. Do you echo those sentiments, or do you think that SPT, they also have international background? They're from one of the major regions, as we say. What do you think? Where do you stand on that?
I think I'm at a solid 50-50 right now. It's just really hard to tell without seeing how they play. Like I said, China used to be a powerhouse region, but as time has passed on, they seem to be slipping off a little bit into the territory where no one is really sure how strong China actually is. Yeah. So this first game is going to tell us a lot about how the regions stack up against each other.
It feels like they're always far more isolated. I mean, it's China, obviously. They're traditionally, it's quite isolated compared to the rest of the world, although Australia is just not on this planet. What do you think in terms of how SPT has practiced in the past? Because we spoke to them, you know, they've practiced against your MVPs, they've practiced against your Tempests, your E-Stars, obviously, because they're from the same region. That has to be some valuable practice.
I mean, you don't magically get better just because you practice with Korean teams. It looks really good on your stat sheet to say, like, I've practiced with Korean teams, but almost everyone from that neck of the woods, everyone east of Europe, which is basically 2/3 of the world, they've all practiced with Korea, you know? The Koreans are also looking to branch out, looking to get to know everyone. Can you learn from it? Yes, but it's definitely not a recipe for success. Okay. Their skill, their creativity, what can they do with that? How many time have they spent to develop that? Do they understand what they're doing? Do they understand what they're going up against? That is going to be far more important than the magic Korea practice ticket.
Yeah. What really stands out for you, Techa, because you actually cast a lot of the China HGC. Yeah. For you, SPT, other than, you know, your wacky little picks and stuff like that, what really stands out for you for them?
Well, the wacky picks are very indicative of probably their biggest strength, and that is their drafting. They draft what works, and it's not a situation of just hard countering. It is a situation of doing an intelligent draft. If the weird thing fits in that intelligent draft, it goes in the draft. If not, it's a standard style. But they have done exceptional drafting since day one, and that has led them to very close games with, like we said, that's led them to beating what was the #1 team in China CE.
I'm getting a notification that we're just waiting for one more of the players to actually join our lobby, and then we will be good to go. So thank you very much for your patience here for HGC, and we like to keep you updated as much as possible, so you know that we're not just killing time. Actually, we are killing time, I'll be honest. But, Fan, talking about Nomia, coming back to them and how they're able to perform. Obviously, the Western Clash was something for them that, you know, made them definitely stand out to the Western region, how they were able to perform there. What are your expectations for Nomia going into this tournament? Because I believe that they did say that they absolutely want to be advancing from the group. Is that a realistic feasibility? What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I think advancing from group stages is realistic for both of these teams. I'm actually kind of excited for this matchup. Just touching up on the drafting situation for SPT, you know, Misaka was their drafter, so I am curious in seeing if without him here, they'll revert back to maybe playing a little bit more traditionally. And if they do, I think it'll be very interesting because Nomia is a team that really looks good, like you said before, in the team fights, in their mechanics. So if both of these teams are going to be relying on their mechanics to see who can win, that's something that I really want to see and see how it compares across teams.
They were busting out Nomia. They were busting out some things that aren't as common anymore. Things like when they were going through their qualifying process, of course. We saw John on things like Lunara from time to time, which they did have success with. You know, they were beating everybody in 2-0 fashion. So do you think that Nomia is a team that can also kind of bring something a little bit more odd to the table? Or do you think, what do you think?
No, I'd say so. They have not just alternate hero picks, sometimes alternate talent picks, which can work. We actually did see them at Western Clash bring out Hinterlands. It was against Vikings, but it's shown that they are willing to adjust if they need to. They, like you said, seem to have a lot of favorites. They love their Falstad, like you said, that they are willing to deviate from that if they need to. So overall, like you said, if Nomia is able to get the team fights they want and they don't get super outdrafted with Misaka missing, then they're in for a really good shot with this.
You're studying, Grubby.
Yeah, I'm looking at Nomia's drafts from Western Clash a few months ago.
Yeah.
And I see heavy emphasis on Falstad, Zeratul, Jaina. It feels a little bit like Team Dignitas' drafts sometimes. They love Ragnaros. And yeah, Falstad just keeps featuring into all of their matches.
All right, we are now into the draft. Thank you very much for the wait, ladies and gents, as we do get into game number 1 here between SPT and Nomia. Let's see where Nomia is going to go to. When I was watching a lot of their most recent qualifying games, there was a lot of focus on like warriors and supports for those bands. Say like Tyraels, Arthuses, etc.
Yeah.
But obviously, we have seen already the power today of Genji.
Yeah, definitely. The Genji first ban and the Zeratul to follow up. We mentioned a little bit about both heroes. Genji, just an absolute powerhouse this patch, and the Zeratul, once again. Nomia played it to great effect in Western Clash, and it's one of those heroes where if your opponent team has an absolutely amazing Zeratul, it's something that always warrants a ban. We also see the power picks making their ways back repeatedly in terms of the Anubrak, and the Uther coming out here.
Okay, I'm just really relieved and excited as a bit of a fan of Nomia to see them prioritizing the right things.
Right.
Something I felt that was missing in the first match in Deadly Kittens' draft is just they said, we want to play our own thing. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
But still, there's things with relative power this patch.
Oh, absolutely.
Genji, Anubrak, Malf. Love the way they're starting so far. Same thing for SPT. Uther is the top 2 support right now with Malf. Taking that early shows a very firm grasp of what we believe right now to be the meta. So really liking both teams so far.
Running the... sorry, go ahead.
No, this was a very quick call on the Illidan ban. Is it just a case of they really just don't want to play against something like that, or they're scared of, oh, Zagara ban coming out? Let's target some China, Tetra.
Yeah, Zagara was run by SPT and a couple other Chinese teams. SPT in particular, though, would run it in a 2-man lane as opposed to a 1-man lane that you would see sometimes, where they would sometimes, especially on Braxis, would run Zagara and then Sonya with it. And it was basically never lost. That lane would just never lose, and it was really down to the other lane to try and get anything back from it. But banning it out here, very scary, good global potential on this map. The Illidan as well, like you said, it's pretty good. Nomia have shown that they can play it every now and again, and even with the Uther stun potential that you can get out, it's still very rough to deal with.
Thoughts on the next picks coming up for SPT?
Looking at it, it looks like I feel like they don't want to run just Evola by herself. I'd like to see something like either an Oriole, a Tassadar, a Zarya, something to support her a little bit. We see the Dahaka being taken, yet another power pick for this patch. Just race card Dahaka, so good on bigger maps. And we see a very heavy frontline coming out with the variant as well.
Is it Twin Blades, Tetra?
I don't think so. Not in this case. It needs a more objective-heavy map where you know where the enemy's going to be all the time. But in this case, I think, Fan, you hit it right on the head, where a second support, even with the double tank, if you can make Valor that hyper carry, could be great. And it's something that China and some of the other Asian regions are very fond of, going with that double support for the Valor and just making her invincible.
Well, I mean, even with the taunt, Varian's still dishing out quite a lot of damage.
Because it's Dahaka 2 now.
Yeah, so they certainly have a decent wealth of damage on their side. What do you think Nomia's thinking about right now?
Well, I'm not sure what they are going for. They could still go for Vikings or Abathur, because all of their heroes fulfill Viking and Abathur conditions. They can poke from afar. Moonfire, Illusion's Grace, Li Ming's shots, Beetles, Impale. So that can still be a thing. They can go for Falstad, Abathur or Vikings to make it an experience and global game.
Oh, first teamer of the tournament, and Lunara.
Well,
okay, it's still love Lunara.
Nomia, yes, this is why we love him.
Very cool. Now, D.Va is a slowly rotating hero where people don't really know how to fit her in the draft yet, but what she is excellent at is teamfight control, repositioning, and zoning around objectives. And I'm just really excited to see D.Va coming out here. There's going to be so much confusion wrought by Nomia in Anubarak and D.Va's ministrations.
So this kind of leads SPT to potentially go for another damage dealer due to the fact if D.Va can just stay on Valor as a solo damage dealer, then there's going to be no output for Super Perfect Team. They need something else, maybe.
I agree. And usually with Varian, you want to delete someone. So I think they do go that damage.
Fan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really wondering how this D.Va is going to perform on Cursed Hollow. It's not a map that I see her too often on. There are some objectives that she's really good at. If you explode it on a tribute, it can zone them out significantly. Same thing with exploding it on a boss. And like I said before, there we have the Oriole going into the double healer to empower the Vala even more. So I'm really actually liking Super Perfect Team's draft a lot here.
We've seen like Oriole Uther actually become a bit more of that common double support, because double support, it has been around for quite a while now. We've seen Lucio being put in there, he had a little bit of a nerf, and now Oriole Uther is something that we're seeing quite a bit of. So it definitely has a bit of power here, right?
It does have a bit of power. They are very much relying on their tanks to protect Valor from that front line, from D.Va really lowering her damage output. As we mentioned before, Varian and Dahaka do have their own damage output, but that combo is just so terrifying. It's been around for ages at this point, many months, still works. You stop Valor from dying, she does all your damage for you.
Here's my question. Do we get Resurrection?
Probably not, I think, but you know, one can hope. I really like this draft as well because they pick the early Uther. We come up with the Lunara to counterpick their Uther pick. But now you have this Oriole, and Oriole can keep up with Lunara's damage. You do have that sustain healing. And on top of that, you still have the Uther with the Guardian of Ancient Kings giving 75 armor to anyone that gets rooted by Malfurion, anyone that gets stunned by a Nubrak. You know, this is going to be a pretty potent composition.
I just want to point out that there's 3 situations in the game where Resurrect is better potentially than Crystal Aegis. When you have a D.Va, she comes back as a mech, even if she dies as a pilot. Secondly, Uther, he goes into his devotion form, where he's a ghost, heals, comes back again with Resurrect. Could be really nice if they send Uther to his death intentionally and then Cho'Gall Psychotic Break. But you say, will we see Resurrect?
Oh my god.
Will we see Resurrect Ariel? It could be. If they run in Uther aggressively, Divine Storm, stun, die, heal again, come back, it could be great.
There is one other argument as well, and that is if your opponent's team is going for a single blow-up comp, which involves a lot of heroics, like a Judgment Hinterland style thing, where you let them blow up that one person and then just resurrect them and it's all gone. But that's the only other time I'd say it would be worth.
Let's see if they walk that line. I want your predictions. We're going to start all the way over there with Mr. Tetra himself.
I
tough one,
haven't seen enough of the D.Va to feel confidence in her yet. So as such, I'm going for Super Perfect Team.
Okay. Grubby?
I've been a D.Va main since 2 weeks. I've played her a lot.
Really
I look at the team and it looks very comfortable to go up against. They have D.Va, they won the game. Nomia.
Nomia, okay. Fan?
Yeah, like
tiebreaker.
Gonna have to go with Super Perfect Team on this one. I'm really liking their draft. Interested in seeing if the D.Va can upset it though. It's gonna be a good match.
Yeah, I am very excited for this one. So it's gonna be double support going up against a D.Va Lunara on the other side as well. So thank you very much, gents. We're gonna be checking in with you throughout this series as it goes on. For now though, we're gonna head over to the commentary team in Dread and Kaldor for Nomia going up against Super Perfect Team.
Thank you very much, Kalaris. And yeah, we have a great game. Not only is everybody excited to see Nomia after what we saw them do at the Western Clash, but we have D.Va.
Yeah, and just a wild draft in general. You know, both of these teams, they stuck to a little bit of what they know, putting their own flavor on it, and it made I'm excited. It's going to be a wild one.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be. So to the left side, we have Super Perfect Team with Wings on Varian, Melody C on Dehaka, Simba on Uther, Shanchao on Vala, and ZZH on Oriole.
And in the red here, we are going to have Nomia. The minor region with high hopes. Robodoba is going to be on a Noob Iraq. Vanilla will be playing the Malfurion. John will be on the Li Ming. Fat94 on D.Va. And Arcaner there is going to find himself, I believe, onto that Lunara.
The one thing that I want to say real quickly is that we talked to so many teams and we asked them, okay, guys, what about D.Va? What's your thoughts?
Yeah.
And so many of them just simply said, we don't see it, but we practice a little bit with her. We think if D.Va is the one hero that changes the meta during the tournament, Because every tournament basically creates its own meta.
Yes.
And they all said, okay, if D.Va is the one linchpin, the one hero that changes everything up, we are prepared. We have someone who plays the hero a bit, but we don't see just yet. We have to wait for the other regions to make the first move. And this is exactly what Nomia is currently trying to do.
Yeah, they are going to be the ones stepping in to the D.Va in the zone. You know, control is probably the biggest strength, I feel like, with D.Va across the board, other than her obvious plentiful amount of health bars and health pools, really. It's just the zoning control she can find out of self-destruct by being able to, you know, manipulate an entire zone. And that could be the difference between a boss and a curse, and those we know to be the main win conditions here on Cursed Hollow.
I'm really excited to see what they can do with it. Nomia, in particular, is a team that we've been talking about a lot. At the West End Clash, they're great showings, and they are a team that a lot expect to do very well here, and it looks like they get away with the first blood of the game, too. Wings. I was actually taunting him a little bit even.
Yeah, I just respect the confidence of Nomia. They didn't even half chase. They didn't even risk the fact that anybody or anything could be over that wall to be able to aid SPT and survive.
You couldn't be more Australian than that.
Just be, it's all good.
I'm not going to put more effort in than I really have to.
Either way, Nomia find themselves with a small lead, but it could lead to the momentum, man, which is something I feel like we don't even begin to really talk about too heavily in these type of tournaments. Nomia bouncing down. Sun Xiao in a terrible spot here, but not enough CC to be able to get a lockdown and the kill.
It's the double support. It's just so crazy. Of course, once again, as in the games before, we look towards Vala for that damage. It's the hyper carry. The whole idea being that Vala can just go very deep, super aggressive, and be what you would usually consider out of position because you have two healers behind her to keep her alive so that she can dish out all that damage. SPT, super perfect team. They have to keep her alive by all means, but so far they are really wrecking that bot lane.
Yeah, they very much are. And the tribute up, a new Barak is going to look at least pick up a free channel for the first half. Dahaka goes in. Melody C with the interrupt there. He has a burrow. If he pops his passive and be able to heal on up. There's still a D.Va inside of that thing. Not going to matter there. Melody C bought time, though, for Varian to transition in. Wings here will be able to join for this 2v2.
He did this really well, though. He bought the time for Wings to come back in. And let's keep in mind that this bot lane is being destroyed by SPT. And now they are buying so much time up at the top with the tribute that Nomia finds himself in an awkward spot. They need someone to move down and help out the bot lane. That's Lunara. She had to take a long way around to not run into a trap here. And in the meantime, we have this 2 versus 2 battle up at the top.
And he's still self-destruct is going to be available. Robodoba goes in for the burrow. Auto-attacking is going to be Fat 94, but it is split. Wings now finds themselves on enemy territory. But Melody C can back. He does have his burrow, and we forgot to, to consider this bot lane. SPT with this double support, Vala hyper carry. They've done a lot with this pressure up on bottom, and typically you don't see that. Lunara's pretty good defensively. Mouth's all right defensively. Leeming maybe not optimal, but they are totally using their compositional strengths to manipulate this map and gain a minor edge.
Yeah, they're definitely shaking things up a bit with the traditional meta here. The tri lane at the bottom is really rough to handle. Self-destruct have been used up at the top. Now Fat 94 still trying, of course, to keep the opponent off the tribute. But both of the teams are slowly sneaking towards level 7, and at that bot lane, we still see Vala going absolute berserker.
Yeah, this is just amazing what SPT is doing. They realize that there is no way. It's funny, Nomia, look at D.Va. I've never even considered that she is just infinite delay. On her own, separated, she can just stall with her mobility, with her health pools, but she can't kill anything either.
Yeah.
So if you don't care about the tribute, then the D.Va on her own does not matter. SPT flat out just goes, we have double support Vala. We're going to commit to bottom. You aren't ever going to kill Varian. You're never going to be able to kill the Haka. And we win the trip aspect of the map and the siege.
Yeah, and so far we see the channel that's going to be interrupted once again. There's the charge, but Wings might now be in a bit too much trouble, especially since Arcana is moving in with Lunara.
He's going to be able to join in. The knockup seals the deal. Wings ends up going down for the second pick here for Nomia at the cost of the fort. SPT, I think they're going to walk away and say worth, especially considering that is in fact in the lane of their boss.
Exactly. Hashtag worth it right here. Job well done. And
I love that. That was one of my favorite plays I've seen in a long while.
Yeah, I really, really like it. They look at the opponent's draft and they're saying, guys, what are really realistically the chances that we are going to get that tribute and win that fight? Let's just shake things up a little bit and go to the opposite lane and just barrel through that thing and keep the pressure up. What can Nomia really honestly do against us there?
And I know this doesn't seem like your first glance thought when looking at Cursed Hollow as a weird situation, but because that tribute took so long, the level power spike is significantly different according to standard tributes when you normally play Cursed Hollow, right? We see the boss and Curse a little bit post around that 11, 12 range, but I feel like now, the fact that we're almost 10 before the second tribute, that second Curse in that boss era that we see could be extremely devastating if either one of these teams has a minor edge.
You're totally right. It shakes the entire dynamic of the map up. Once again, though, Fat94 going in with the boosters here on the D.Va, trying to lock the opponent down. Melody C moving in, self-destruct. Already used. The drag is on, though, but not enough to get a kill against John on his Li Ming.
Dude, that was so close there for a moment, but Fat is fine. Giants pressuring out on bottom, and Arcaner there on the Lunara is going to be able to get a bit of delay. So now the first tribute delay was in favor of SPT, but now it's inverse because the Giants, they're emulating that tri-lane that we experienced all of the first tribute.
Exactly, and now what we have up at the top lane, Vala falling, the hyper carry, we still see Lunara moving into the middle, actually giving up on the tribute here. She could have stalled it out a bit longer, but she was afraid of the Haka moving in once that they lost vision up at the top lane.
And the heroic choice there for Fat94 on the D.Va is in fact going to be the big shot. So looking for the cooldown there. He's already spec'd quite heavily, actually, into focusing on self-destruct, being able to have that as frequently as possible, and now making sure he's got his mech.
That personally makes me a bit sad because I think Bunny Hop is the silliest and also the coolest talent in the entire game.
You're like, blop, 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 blop. You might need it now, though. There's going to be the zone around the boss with that self-destruct. Wings goes in, he gets cocooned, and talk about the world's most anticlimactic explosion.
Yeah, exactly. That didn't do anything. Wings is still there, though, and we have Divine Shield already used on the side of Uther as Fat is once again dropped out of the mech, but Li Ming falls.
Melody C just sniping the backline there with that with the Dahaka. That was the second drag onto a Li Ming. You should not be able to do that here on the Dahaka, so showing his prowess there on that hero. And once again, setting SP2 in a favorable position.
And that was also a kill they needed. The boss was moving through the top lane already. If they lose out on the tribute here and maybe lose a hero themselves, then all of a sudden Nomia would have had a play towards the bottom boss as well. And that's something you don't really want to risk here. So we find ourselves 8 minutes in on 2 kills against 3, still very even in experience here. Vala has to be careful though as Fat moves in once again.
There goes the taunt on to D.Va, but she's going to be fine here afterwards. As you see her isolated, trying to withdraw. Fat falling so low, he has no mech, and that is now Sun Xiao locking down. The cocoon was used, the drag is followed up, but beautiful cleanse are coming out from Vanilla. A member down, and Nomia just flat out walks away from a second trip.
Good coordination on the side of Super Perfect team, especially if you consider that this is really a team that not only did they move into the slot so late, but also now with not their normal roster, they still have a few adjustments to make. Substitute or no substitute player. So far they are playing an impressive first game against Nomia.
I am very much impressed with this team because, again, we have seen China over and over again with international play struggle to display themselves at what we like to call the final power. You know, we have never seen them at their final form, it felt like, for many, many different region or different tournaments, but one thing that I feel like they can do so much better than everyone else is just put together that squad and perform. I just feel for what we've seen from them on an international level, if I took North American players, mishmashed them together to try and produce such a world-class team, there's no way they would put up such a beautiful performance like SPT has right now.
China strikes me always as this raw power that is sometimes unrefined. Yeah. They're just always strong in these team fights. They're aggressive, they go in, but there's just this little bit of refinement that oftentimes misses. And as you said, like within a second, they can throw together a lineup that is always going to at least pose a threat to you.
Yeah, and that is just an amazing feature here coming out from those players. Nice damage going on to Sun Xiao, but the double support healing it up. Self-destruct is going to be used. Melody C digging into the back line, and the explosion nets no kill.
But Wings was close to falling here, and Melody C is in trouble as well, but Oriel saving with the Aegis, blocking the ult on the Haka as he moves in once again, tries the drag, doesn't get it, root on the ground. Fat 494 is once again moving in as well. A massive massive poke battle between the two teams on level 13 talents.
Yeah, that is now, Nomia is in a very tough position. They do have pressure up on the map, forcing Dahaka to isolate now. Wings eats a bit of damage. The tribute is attempted here by SPT. Now, you see Melody C, he's trying to use the race car then. He is using as much as he can around the shrubs, waiting for Nomia to move in, which is why they're so hesitant. Dragged down, and it looks like they decide it's their time.
Yeah, once again, Fat94 moving in. He went for expensive plating on 13, trying to boost his hit points just a bit in the Mac form here. We have Melody C actually moving back outside the vision range of the opponent. He should have his Z up again.
Oh, that's going to be the taunt, and a lot of damage on the Sun Shell. Things are fine. Cocoon is going to be dropped. Still, camps are pressuring for Nomia. This is what they want. The longer, the better this goes. SPT eventually hits a moment. They're just going to drop all the heroics. They pick up the tribute and a curse. But was that worth it? They need a lot out of this to make up for all the damage they lost just to get that tribute.
It's also, all the lanes are really pushed against them.
Yeah.
It was so well done by Nomia here. The timing and the coordination of that. That's usually what we attribute to Chinese teams, Korean teams, and they are just dropping it and put SPT in a really awkward spot.
Yeah, and macro play is not something you look at as the strength of some of those smaller regions, and they just flat out inverse what looked like a very dominant macro performance out of SPT after that first tribute.
They even said macro isn't really where they think they thrive, just simply because the way that Australia works for them, the ANZ region. So right now they are saying, hey, we want the team fights, but it's the macro game where they currently completely have the upper hand.
Yeah, we straight up, it was no hesitation. We asked them, what is your biggest strength? You know, what are you looking at? And they're just, you know, macro game is not necessarily the strength here for the squad, but I disagree. SPT though, with this curse.
They have the curse, exactly.
They've gotten a fort out of it. One fort with a curse at 12 minutes into the game. The entire time what Nomia was able to do over that last tribute, 3/4 of mid, including the front wall. Bottom went 3/4, not including the front wall. So in total, Nomia, over that tribute, gained more than SPT as a 5-man roster with a curse.
Yeah, and they are still the ones who have actually a chance of taking the lead in experience now. They had Lunara at the top. She was pressuring the structures, taking the fort down, pushing the waves in. And they're going for boss again. This time it is going to be the split as SPT is focusing on their own boss at the bot lane. And both teams already eliminated the fort on their boss lane. So this is pressure towards the keeps immediately.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see with this middle ground, because again,
this is a game of chicken.
Yeah, it kind of is, yeah. And again, like when I was talking about that first tribute in the delay, after the first curse, even when dominated by SPT, we're rounding the 16 mark. And I am afraid that if one team, again, is going to get that slight snowball, because the distance between 16 and 20 is so severe, and we're going to hit this limbo of curses and tributes, that realistically, if SPT or Nomia, again, 3/4 lead advantage, they're going to be able to manipulate the map so heavily that I don't think the other can control. It's weird how it works out, and I can't articulate it accurately and exactly how the impact happens, but the game evolves if the objectives don't cycle the way you expect.
Yeah. So also, in this case now, both of them actually deciding to play the passive part.
Yes.
Defending, not making any moves here. The one thing that I want to still highlight is that, of course, one big advantage of SPT going into the late game is also the Haka. The global, having that on the map here, that has a pretty big impact towards the later stages of the game as well. He can really be a game changer in these scenarios. We've seen him already earlier over the tribute fight, just simply going back to base, healing up, and then just burrowing in again. And having that ability just outside of your opponent's vision range really gives you a second engage that you have, and also a slight advantage with that health bar once again fully stacked up. But we're now going into 16 versus 16 as Nomia is looking to pick up the next talent. And yeah, this is a huge power spike that we currently have, especially on the side of SPT. Going at this point for the attack speed bonus, thanks to the Will of Heaven on Oriel, so making Vala even more dangerous in these long and drawn out fights with a double support to back her up.
All right, so now we find ourselves with the tribute. Nomia, after that mid-fort, has the even talent here. So really, this is going to be an even skirmish here, no pressure out onto the map. First, we open with a taunt. decent stun, but it forced a cleanse.
Look at the mid lane again. Once again, the camp is already in position up to the top. SPD is moving with the 2, but still fire. Oh, Vala in a lot of trouble here. Malfurion hitting the silence. Here comes the Cocoon. Divine Shield is out though, but we have the Haka falling in the back.
And Vanilla kiting the entire time, keeping himself up. Robodobo with that burrow onto San Xiao. The explosion, and that is 5-4-0. Nomia just turns it up, and it looks like they are going to look to end this game.
Aussie. They are moving into the mid lane right now. Look at that fight. Once again, the zoning by Fat94 here alone. Uther split from the rest of the team, and that started this entire snowball here. A team wipe. 15 minutes into the game as Nomia goes for the core.
And that was just absolutely amazing. They talked about they want the team fight, and they showed it in that last one. 5-0. But that macro play, I cannot compliment these guys enough. That was astounding.
This was absolutely awesome. After the West End Clash, we looked at them. They were talking about how hard it is to find good practice within the region, how they're currently always striving to better themselves, but how it's a really rough path. And now look at these guys. They just took down the Chinese team, playing extremely well. A perfect team fight at the end. 5-man wipe and carrying it towards the core.
Yeah, that was just... It's so awesome to see this kind of innovation and play out of Nomia because, again, the Western Clash built so much hope for me with this squad because, again, we view them always as like, you know, they might be able to put up a fight, especially teams like PBA in the past, but it's really not going to be that competitive. But they're the first squad I've ever looked at, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. I'm looking at UNNA. I'm not confident on that. It's just there's very few teams that I'm like, you don't have a chance of beating them.
That's one of those things, right? You want to just pick them, throw them into one of the league regions and see like, okay, let's see how you guys are going to do.
Yeah, it is amazing. And again, the self-motivation that they've been able to find, because we've heard in the past they struggle, you know, a bit with just finding those partners, but they find it within themselves to truly improve.
But guys, this was, of course, only game number 1. We have another one coming up in just a bit. Before that happens, we're going to hear from our panel once again about what just happened on Curse Hollow.